Greetings and welcome. To begin, we acknowledge that the CSU Monterey Bay campus sits on the unceded territory of the Rumsen Ohlone people. I'm Professor Umi Vaughn, Faculty Director of the Center for Black Student Success at CSUMB. Our center engages and empowers African diaspora students by providing academic, professional, and personal support, as well as cultural enrichment programming. The center is a hub and home for Black students on our campus, and our job is to help them succeed, graduate, etc. This event belongs to the Catherine Dunham African Diaspora Art Series. Presentations in the series expand Dunham's legacy as a dancer, choreographer, anthropologist, and activist by exploring connections among Black cultures and social justice struggles around the world. This evening, we are joined by a master percussionist and singer, Mr. Pedro Rosales, a son of Peru and a son of the cajon or box drum. Pedro, welcome, mi hermano, welcome.
It is my pleasure to be part of this program, and thank you, Umi, so much for this opportunity.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. Pedro, we've been discussing this between the two of us over the last few days. Africans were first brought to the colony of Peru in South America starting in 1529. In the beginning, they were intended to work the mines of the Andes mountain region. However, soon they were rerouted to the coast, Lima, etc. They came from a variety of regions and ethnic groups in West and Central Africa, and they brought with them rich cultural and musical traditions. Right now, Pedro, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Why did you decide to dedicate your life to the cajon? What is cultura criolla in Peru, etc.? Let us know.
Okay, well, as everything, it began when I was a little boy. My mom always saw that in me. She placed me in different classes. One of those classes was a marinera dance class. I think that opened my ears for the rhythm. And after that, I started to be very curious about the percussion because marinera had this, we call it bombo. It's like a march bass drum. It goes like the same as Landó, like boom, 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 boom. So that backbone right there, it always resonated in my head. And that kind of like, it was forming the root of my desire to be a percussionist. So I went from being a dancer and started to take a few basic cajon classes when I was 12, 13. So that was my beginning back in Lima, 1987, 8, something like that.
Okay,
Around
so
that
while
time.
we were listening to the Fat Boys and all that stuff, you were going deep on marinera and those things, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I I was dancing in like tournaments in Peru, and I was feeling the what do you call it, Peruvianism. That to be what the identity. So I think that infused a lot of pride in me about being a Peruvian. So that's how I started, dancing. Um, your next question. I'm sorry, you mentioned like 3 or 4 questions. I don't know.
Well, the photograph that just came up was a picture of your grandfather, I believe, who you called a criollísimo. So I wonder if you could explain to people, what does cultura criolla mean? What does criollo mean in the Peruvian context, for example?
Well, by default, Peruvian culture is criolla, is a mixture. It just the difference is that sometimes the percentage of influences is different. Like, for instance, 2 examples: music from Lima has like an equal percentage of Spanish, Afro-derived influence, kind of like equal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where then you go southern, you go to Chincha, and then you see this Andean presence. So it becomes a third, you know. So and you can feel those influences in percentage. Uh, I mean, in different regions, show that those differences of percentage of influence. That's what I would call. So yeah, Afro Peruvian music, quote unquote, is part of this bigger umbrella of that is música criolla, Creole music in Peru.
Yes. Um,
I'm sorry, the picture you were seeing was of my great of my grandfather Amadeo, the dad of my father. I He never knew him. I never met him. He died when my dad was 3 months old. But there is always stories about him being a very nice guitar player, and he kind of died in his own terms because he had a rough life. He loved to play until late, and then he went early to work and other things, and that lifestyle kind of took his life. So
okay,
he died
okay.
at 23.
Wow, okay. Um, there's a term that I learned about when I had the pleasure of visiting Peru. It's duende. When people talk about duende, literally speaking, that's like an elf or a mystical little creature like that. But in a figurative sense, in Peru, when people talk about duende, Pedro, what are they talking about?
Well, it's a magical spell. It's like the happiness and this beauty space of perfection, if you want, like a balance. Because what you find is different elements of music, food, and friendship in one place. That could be a peña criolla, a Creole peña. Peña is a gathering space where you find these three elements. Or it could be in a living room of a poor family where you can find that. The duende is that is basically musical or gathering magic.
Yes, a certain soulfulness, right? Tinged with
That's it.
African and other cultures of Peru. Beautiful.
True. True.
So, Peru, Pedro, please tell us a little bit about the instruments that form the ensemble of the Peruvian music that you make. Tell us about the instruments.
Well, we mainly have the cajon. The cajon, as you know, or you may know, is the most important percussion instrument from the coast of Peru. Like every genre, every rhythm uh, is influenced by the cajon beat. It's kind of like the cajon is the heart of the music culture of Peru. Then we can expand on the history and all of that later on.
Yeah, yeah,
We also have the cajita. The cajita is a minor percussion instrument that evolved from colonial times. It is used in a comparse style. You hold it. And the good thing about the cajita is that you can dance and play at the same time. So it's like a ideal instrument for a dancer or a singer, because you can go into parades and just walk the streets while playing. Okay, so the other instrument is the quijada or donkey's jaw. It could be also a horse jaw, jawbone. That cajita and the donkey's jawbone, they always been together. They are part of like a family. Right nowadays is a trilogy with the cajon, but back then there are proof that they existed since colonial times because you can see pictures, watercolor paintings depicting The donkey's jaw with a cajita playing at the same time by regular people. So yeah, it's part of our identity. As a clear example,
cajón, llamador, and now cajón, replicador. Cajita, sigue allá. Hijada,
Yep. Nice. So one question that I have, Pedro, is what is the difference between the Peruvian cajon and the Cuban cajon, which is used in rumba and is also kind of world renowned? What's the difference between the two?
well, I mean, put it this way: in Peru, in the coast of Peru, cajon is everything. Cajon is the most important thing. Where in Cuba, I think is like an extension of the format of congas in rumba. You have three cajones, and they kind of emulate what the congas do. I'm not an expert on Cuban music, but I don't see the cajon as the most important thing. So I think that's the main difference, importance.
Okay. Okay. Um, Another important element of La Música Criolla de Peru is the guitar. I know that they have a particular style and flavor, and that there's some exponents of that music that are stellar and so beautiful. Could you talk just a little bit about the Peruvian guitar style too?
Well, the Peruvian guitar, man, is so broad. I can just talk about the coastal,
Okay.
because the Andean Peruvian guitar is a whole different universe, and I invite the students or any scholars to go into that direction if they want. But it's a whole different universe. So coastal Peruvian guitar, it also has three elements of influence: Spanish, of course, because of the dominant culture; the African approach to it, the syncopation, the 6/8, the intrinsic, I mean, the implicit um, syncopation, and the Andean influence, because a lot of chords are pentatonic, so they are emulating all Andean melodies at the same time. The Afro Peruvian guitar, in essence, is the guitar from the coast of Peru. Um, there is one huge character that kind of changed the, the, the game forever. This character, this superb human being, was Vicente Vasquez. Vicente Vasquez is so fundamental because he used his ancestral memory things that he picked up from his family. They are from northern Lima. So back in the 50s, mid 50s, at the Pancho Fierro group era, I need to talk about that too because that's going to make more sense. In that era, there was a period called the Afro-Peruvian revival, you know, when uh, Afro-Peruvian music was getting the importance it deserved because it was kind of invisible before. So the crucial part of Vicente was that whatever he didn't know, he created or recreated. So a lot of the patterns that we are practicing nowadays are part of that experimentation he did back in the 50s. So in other words, there is a before and after Vicente Vasquez. Remember that name. So that's just covering Vicente Vasquez. His approach, the syncopation, how he recreated festejo patterns. Festejo, as you know, is one of the most important Afro-Peruvian rhythms, one of the most popular. He recreated and form the Landó patterns too. How he did that? Well, he took elements from Marinera, he took elements from old tunderos, and he applied his own blackness to it. So that's how he formed this new genre, this fresh genre, very Peruvian genre. And it was so powerful that even today it's so compatible with other forms like jazz and bossa. Landó is so compatible, and he's a big portion of that. Vicente Vasquez is a big portion of that. I think it's because he's one of the masters of Marinera Limeña too, and Zapateo. So he had all of these deep roots in himself, and that made him able to truly experiment, truly innovate. So that's why I have to emphasize Vicente Vasquez so much.
Did Vicente come before or after Carlos Aire?
Oh, before.
Okay, okay, okay.
There are eras. Let me just talk about the context of Vicente, the era.
Yeah.
In the mid 50s, there was a group formed by a scholar, by a professor from Berkeley, Jose Duran. Jose Duran. He 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 was part of the, what do you call it, oligarchy of Peru. He was like a prominent guy, so he had access to you know the mainstream media and all of that. He was a very intellectual guy. He taught literary, what do you call it, um,
Literature?
literature, like
Hmm.
all Spanish literature in Berkeley. Well, but so he was like 6 months in the United States and 6 months in Peru, doing what he loved most, being around all of the masters of Creole music and Afro-Peruvian music, or whatever you want to call it. So he was a visionary. Um, because of him, there are recordings of masters getting together and playing all marineras. And if you listen to those marineras and resbalosas, they kind of resemble a lot to festejo. They have a lot of common grounds. So this guy was the one facilitating this. At the same time, he also created, founded the Pancho Fierro group. He had he felt the need to preserve Afro-Peruvian traditions of Lima, to emphasize the African presence in coastal music. Because as I said before, it was invisibilized. They just show it as a what do you call it, exotic thing, but not as a main thing. So this guy Uh, he just surrounded himself by elders, masters, and people that were playing this type of music, this underground music. And that's how Vicente became one of his advisors, and with his dad, the great Porfirio Vasquez. And he and other masters like Asquez, many more, uh, started recreating the festejo, recreating the Landó, the Samacueca, the Zapateo, So it was like this lab because it was composed for the stage.
Yes, sir.
So that's a new beginning of coastal music and dance of
So,
Peru.
so for example, Pedro, when I've been in Peru or when I've had the opportunity to be around um, heavy Peruvian percussionists here in the Bay Area, and I've asked to learn different, you know, festejo patterns or landau patterns. Everybody says, well, first let's look at samacueca. Can you talk about samacueca as a root style within Peruvian music?
My gosh. Well, if you allow me, I will. It's a long topic. It's so rich.
Yes.
It's so rich that Samacueca has been named again. It's politically, I mean, let me start from the beginning. As you know, there was a dominant culture, the Spanish. They were the ones setting the rules.
Yeah.
As part of that, they brought their music, European music.
Yeah.
They brought the minuet, for instance. So, in, in, in essence, Samacueca is the interpretation of poor and African descendants of the dominant cultural music and dance. They interpret it with their own flavor, with their own style. You know what I'm saying? So they were
Yeah.
not Spanish; they were already mixed or uh, descendants from slavery
From
or mixed.
Angola or from wherever, right?
Well,
Hmm.
in Peru, the thing is that we're a mix of the mix of the mix. So of
Mm.
course they were Angolians, of course they were from Mozambique, but a lot there was a lot of African descendants coming from the Antilles, from the islands, from Cuba, from the mines of Potosí, Bolivia, from Brazil. So it's like a mix of the mix of the mix, plus indigenous people and Spanish, because the difference is that Spanish people did not have any problems forming new families with because it was not as here, like it's more like divided, in percentages, once again, percentage. In Peru, the thing is more mixed, you know what I'm saying? So Samacueca is part of that. Okay, let's go
Yes.
back to Samacueca.
Okay.
So Samacueca, okay, we continue after that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That was a beautiful composition of my brother, my fellow musician friend, and brother Braulio Barrera.
Braulio Barrera, yes. Um, Pedro, can you talk to us about how music exists beyond mere entertainment in Peru? That's one of the beautiful things about a lot of Black cultures is that it's not just about going to a show and you see a performance and you clap, but it's kind of woven into your everyday life, music and dancing and fellowship. How does that work in Peru, please?
Well, it's part of our identity. Uh, you can see it present in people from Lima, Callao, La Victoria. Yes, it's part of our legacy identity. In mainstream uh, music from the coast of Peru, we can see the influence in different regions, like in Chile, Argentina. Uh, I've been able to see like other artists adding to the repertoire, Peruvian music, Afro Peruvian music. Um, and also in the present time, our ambassador Susana Baca, she's been very present in the world music scene. Yeah,
She won a Grammy, right? She's won a few Grammys.
yeah, I think she won two already. So
Yes.
she's been very active, and I'm very proud of that. She's doing a great job, and she's been so consistent for so many decades. So yeah, very nice,
When
beautiful.
when I look at an artist I love like Eva Ayón, I even see Black American, US American artists like Tina Turner and Beyonce in terms of this like bombshell projection and you know, taking all the elements of the regional culture and fusing it. What about Eva Ayón? What about música popular peruana?
Well, Eva Young is, in my opinion, the most important Afro-Peruvian singer for the last maybe 40 years, even longer than that, inside of Peru. Inside of Peru, she influenced other singers. Uh, Her style of music also influenced other musicians. Um, I mean, yeah, you can hear that in other singers really imitating her style so much uh, inside of Peru.
Yes.
Outside of Peru, Susana Baca is the greatest. But Susana Baca is not the greatest inside of Peru. I mean, and nothing wrong with that. It's just taste. I
Yes.
think Susana Baca's style is more universal.
Okay. Um, Pedro, what about Vals Criollo? How does that relate to Samacueca? Where does Vals Criollo sit in the panorama of Peruvian music styles?
Well, that's another interpretation of the Peruvian people to a European uh, music that was on fashion. It came to Peru at the end of the 1800s, and it acquired Peruvian characteristics. Like I think the Samacueca influence the Walls Criollo with the bordones and the syncopation, and eventually with the use of the cajon. But the cajon in the walls came later, in the 1940s, 50s. Uh, but one last thing that I want to mention, just to round out the Samacueca concept, is that the true Samacueca is Marinera Limeña. The name changed because of wars and political stuff that occurred in Peru in the last centuries. And the Samacueca that you just listen right now is the new name to a genre that was restarted by Victoria Santa Cruz in her search to put the African presence stronger. So that's what Victoria Santa Cruz did. Is another huge personality in Afro-Peruvian music and dance. It's another one that changed the game. That's why there one Zamacueca that no longer is being called Zamacueca, that is the Marinera Limeña, and the Zamacueca that I use here is the recreation that happened after Victoria Santa Cruz work.
Okay. So let's take a moment and listen to a Vals Criollo right now with Pedro Rosales y Braulio.
Así, así. Quiero, ritmo, golpe, topa, 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 topa. Oigo. Rebeca, yo muero por ti. Rebeca, yo muero por ti. Lejos de ti yo me siento abatido. Tú recordarás el amor prometido al contemplar tu rostro encantador. Rebeca, yo muero por ti. Rebeca, yo muero por ti. Lejos de ti yo me encuentro abatido. Tú recordarás el amor prometido al contemplar tu rostro encantador. Aquí me tienes penando sin poderme consolar. A todas horas te ruego, ay, 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 no me vayas, Rebeca, a olvidar. Recuerda cuando anduvimos por montes y serranías, cuando la sed te mataba, ay, 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 de mi lágrima bebías. Oiga ahí. Así, así, Barro Barrera. Aquí me tiene penando sin poderme consolar. A todas horas te ruego, ay, 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 no me vayas, Rebeca, a olvidar. Recuerda cuando anduvimos por montes y serranías, cuando la sed te mataba, ay, 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 de mi lágrima bebía. Recuerda cuando anduvimos por montes y serranías, cuando la sed te mataba, ay, 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 de mi lágrima bebía. De esta lágrima bebía. De mi lágrima bebía.
Lindo. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pedro, what, Pedro, has been the plight of Black Peruvians in Peru?
Well, the very similar to here, the struggle of discrimination and stereotype,
Yes,
stereotyping.
yes,
Yes, I mean, I think there is a lot of work to be done in the Peruvian society. Uh, until just a few years, you could see in national Peruvian TV the blackface in a comedy, and it was accepted, not to all, but to a very important percentage of the population, even by Afro Peruvian people. They thought it was funny, and I think sometimes it takes us to come outside to Peru to see what's really going on. So fortunately, that's being forbidden now, but just 5 years ago. So that's
yes.
something to think about.
And so, following up on that question, Pedro, what's been your experience as a Peruvian person and as a person of color within the United States during your time here?
Well, I when I came here, um, I think my sense of identity kind of got even more triggered because I'm Peruvian, so I think for me, if it felt that it was very important. I mean, it was very important for me to show uh, where I come from and to share my experience in Peru and yeah, and also see other cultures, and so that's been my experience. I feel in a way privileged of being able to share my culture with people from other communities.
One of the things that I appreciate so much about you, Pedro, is, I can feel from you your rootedness in your home country of Peru, but also that you have adapted and come to know the Bay Area and US culture too. So, with that in mind, I pose this question: why should Black Americans, especially youth, college students at CSU Monterey Bay, for example, why should they care at all about Afro Peruvian culture?
Well, specifically because there are more things that mm, our similarities are more than our differences. We have kind of a very similar background of a struggle, of working hard, of pride about our roots, and also the African presence is there, and you can feel it in the syncopation of our rhythms, um, and depth of the lyrics, the phrasing of the vocals when you sing. There, I can see the similarities there. I think there is a common ground for all of us to do something together. I've been doing little things like that with some collaborations with um, Black people from here, United States, and it always felt like it's organic, So I'm very happy to continuing doing that.
Pedro, man, when you're ready to perform or something like that, call me. I'm ready. Me and Rumi, we're ready.
Yeah.
For right now, let's listen to a sample of the rhythm called Landó, one of the funkiest, most flavorful rhythms from Peru. Landó.
All right.
Toro mata y toro mata. Toro mata, rumbandero ahí, toro mata. Toro mata y
Oh, awesome. Sweet, sweet. So, Pedro, as you know, we're living in tumultuous times. There's the corona crisis, la coronita, political turmoil as well, a nation divided with insurrections in the capital, assaults on all kinds of citizens, Asian and otherwise. These are times that call for some of the traditional uses of the drum in African diaspora cultures to gather the community, to heal, to prepare for battle, as it were, whether military or cultural, or to celebrate identity, culture, whatever. Is música criolla, is Landó, is Samacueca, is Bas Criollo political in any way? And do you compose music for these times?
Well, yeah, all of those genres they started uh, politically with social justice in mind, like the waltzes. Felipe Pinglo was a composer that was inspired by the problems of his time in the 1930s and 1920s. He composed for the poor. He composed for inequality of female treatment, women treatment. Um, so Chauca Granda also she was inspired by the fight against the system. Victoria Santa Cruz, she has many compositions about human rights, and Nicomede Santa Cruz also his decimas, his poetry, most of the is being based on equality and social justice. So yes, it's totally compatible. In my case, um, I have to be honest. I have not been that political. I mean, I participate with other people that are really political, and I always embrace them. But as a source of inspiration, I always got the rhythm itself for my, my seat of inspiration. So, but I think it's never late to start.
Yes, sir. So let's get into a festejo for right now. Festejo is one of the most popular or well-known Afro-Peruvian rhythms. Let's hear a festejo, and then you can talk to us a little bit about the meaning of festejo within Peruvian culture too. Festejo.
Okay.
Venimos de los infiernos, no se vayan a asustar. Venimos de los infiernos, no se vayan a asustar. Con nuestros ramos y cuernos que son solo para bailar. Con nuestros ramos y cuernos que son solo para bailar. Son de los diablos ojos, venimos a cantar. Inventamos cachapá, la guitarra de tocar. Son de los diablos ojos, venimos a cantar. Inventamos cachapá, la guitarra de tocar. Son de los diablos son, ajá, son de los diablos son. Son de los diablos son, son de los diablos son. Son de los diablos son, son de los diablos son. Son de los diablos son, son de los diablos son. Todos los años salimos cuando llegue carnaval. Todos los años salimos cuando llegue carnaval. Alientamos a la gente con nuestro baile infernal. Alientamos a la gente con nuestro baile infernal. Son de los diablos son, que venimos a cantar. Inventado cachapá, la guitarra de tocar. Son de los diablos son, que venimos a cantar. Inventado cachapá, la guitarra de tocar. Son de los diablos son, son de soy el diablo mayor y me llaman ñovite. Yo soy el diablo mayor y me llaman ñovite. Por esta vez más que tengo, miren lo grande que es. Por esta vez más que tengo, miren lo grande que es. Son de los diablos, son. Venimos a cantar. He inventado cachafá, la guitarra de tocar. Son de los diablos, son. Venimos a cantar. He inventado cachafá, la guitarra de tocar. Son de los diablos, 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 son de los diablos.
Amazing, amazing. So, Pedro, as we, give the audience members a chance to ask any last questions of you or, like that, tell us just a little bit about festejo as a popular Peruvian rhythm before we close out.
Well, that festejo you heard is one of the varieties of festejo. That's Son de los Diablos. Son de los Diablos is part of this recreation I told you about, the revival part, the mid 50s. So Son de los Diablos was one of those. There is the main festejo. There is an Inga version of festejo, and also there is the Alcatraz, which is slower, a little more erotic, if that a good term to say. So festejo has many sub genres. Yeah.
We have a question from the audience. Let's bring that up. Is there a call and response dance component to Afro-Peruvian music similar to Dominican palo or Puerto Rican bomba? From Kenny Garcia.
Yes. I think the most you can see that in the choreographies of Peru Negro when they follow, like classic pieces like Ollita No Ma or Festejo or Inga. You can see the bongo or the cajon player following the moves of the dancer. So that would be a clear example. Then there is another genre of festejo called Valentina, which is kind of commercial. It's kind of like the punta dance from what is the name of Honduras, I think.
And
Yeah,
uh-huh.
it's kind of like in that style. So it's a festejo super quick where the bongo player follows the steps of the dancer. So those would be the samples of what the person asking is mentioning, kind of like something similar.
Yes, sir. Pedro, where can people find more music from Proyecto Landó? Where can they catch you performing, and what's coming up next on your schedule of offerings?
Well, right now, due to the circumstances, we are not performing live, but it doesn't mean that we are not creating. My current project right now is I'm rediscovering one of the greatest Afro-Peruvian singers of all time, Marina Lavalle. She was a lead singer of Peru Negro during the 70s, and she just started her role as a composer. So Marina Lavalle has this style, this phrasing, and if you add that to composing, then it becomes something very special. So I'm privileged to be part of the production of her songs. I mean, we just came out with, I would say, around 30 songs. Among waltzes, festejos, landó, panalivio. So we are kind of like trying to get every genre from the coast of Peru. Yeah, from the coast of Peru.
Yes. Well, Pedro, it's always a joy to be in your presence. It's always a joy to see how you put those hands on that cajon and, the musical sensibility that you have and the way that you have of explaining Peruvian music and culture. We here at the Center for Black Student Success, thank you for being with us, and we applaud you. Thank you so much.
Umi, for real, it's been for me. It's a great opportunity to show a little bit of my culture of Peru. To kind of bring awareness of this alternative music for you guys. Yeah, I hope I can see you around, and please don't hesitate to call me if you need anything.
Yes, sir. Right now, I want to give a big thanks to our viewing audience, no matter where in the world you are. Shout out to the students of CSU Monterey Bay, all the CBSS family. I want to give a special request to all the action team that helps plan the events for CBSS, Brian Corpenning, Vanessa Lopez Littleton, Najoni Chow Garcia, Bernadette Ortiz, our student team, Judah, Zara, and Jaren. Thanks also to Braulio, who was accompanying Pedro in the performing. Thanks to our producer, Sonia Pina. Gracias otra vez. Thanks again to Pedro Rosales. Stay tuned, everybody, because we have a few more events from CBSS coming up before the semester is through. On April 7th, from 4 to 6 p.m., we have a panel called Black Men in Education, an event that's co-presented by CBSS with the College of Education at CSU Monterey Bay, trying to recruit Black men into the work of teaching in the K through 12 profession. That representation is necessary, it's beneficial, it's crucial, so this event is trying to grow that. Then the very next day, on April 8th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m., we have an event called Journey to Brazil, where yours truly will share original videos, photographs, and anecdotes from recent field research in the cities of Brasilia, Salvador da Bahia, and Maceió, as well as Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, to give you an idea of what's happening in that country and how it relates to African American and other African diaspora cultures. Please join us. And last but not least, don't forget to donate. Put a little bit of financial energy where your mouth is to help us continue this great work. Thank you so much, and until the next time, over and out. The Center for Black Student Success. Thanks you.